Welcome to Framework, and our latest episode about a movie in theaters right now, Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. I'm John, one of the hosts of Framework, and with me as always is the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today?
Hi, all good sir. I'm in high spirits.
Oh, hi thee. Very good. All right, and joining us once again, sort of a student of the game, I would say, Michael Martin. Welcome back to the program.
Huzzah!
Yes, and other medieval noises as well.
That's
Yes.
right.
We should have decided who was going to do the dwarf voice before we started.
I can't do a Scottish accent to save my life, so it wouldn't be me.
Well, but I think dwarvish is just any bastardization of Scottish that you want to throw out there, Lottie. I may have even gone Irish. I don't know. Honor Among Thieves, full-blown Dungeons and Dragons movie. Is dwarves like the only thing that was missing, really?
There's like one extra dwarf, but that was it. Yeah.
I originally had thought I had read that Michelle Rodriguez's character Holga was supposed to be a dwarf, but I mean I don't think she was.
Certainly not.
No.
No, her height is sort of a joke. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the character as written would function as a dwarf just fine, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, give or take the running joke about her attraction to halflings. But yeah, you could have been done. I mean, I think she works great as a barbarian. I mean, honestly, is it backhanded to be like, this maybe the best work of Michelle Rodriguez's career?
No, I mean she's not like this is the kind of movie she makes. She makes Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious.
And action films and Resident Evil films and genre B movies, and she's kind of great at it. And it's rare that she gets a role this good, and she nails it. And it's a largely kick-ass kind of silent barbarian type, and she's just very good at that. Having worked in this genre for a very long time, she knows what she's doing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course it's. I guess it's
it is
backhanded.
Well, it's her cast 1,000% to type. It's not stretching her range whatsoever, but she's really good in this. Kind of makes the movie to a degree. I mean, it's like her relationship with Pine is the realest thing in the movie, I feel like.
Oh, so she's your MVP? Interesting. Okay.
Well, no, I mean,
I'd agree with that.
I don't know if I'm even calling it MVP, but I'm saying only competition for Pine, and this really should be a star vehicle for Pine, right? So she's kind of overperforming is my point, I guess.
I think the whole cast is quite strong, actually, in this. I think everyone's kind of doing their job. Oh, okay.
I do want to kind of echo what Al said. Is that I agree that Pine does really good work, but to some degree, I kind of take that for granted at this point. I feel like he's really good at whatever he's in. I think he's all in. I'm still to some degree, I'm still surprised he's in this movie because I never would have thought he'd be in it. But I was really impressed with him just in the sense of not necessarily by their writing, but I felt like he really was all in. There was no shame. He was 100% on board with this and the tone. But I agree with Al. I think without Michelle Rodriguez, kind of as a balance for Pine and their just refreshingly good friendship in the movie. No shipping it. I mean, it was just I loved that. I thought she was really good, and I thought she brought a good balance. And did what you needed.
I was kind of shipping them. I was like, why wouldn't they hook up? But
yeah, I was a little surprised. Like, are they saving that for the sequel? I mean, honestly, it feels to me like kind of a waste to save that for the sequel. Maybe they felt like this. They put their romance eggs in the wizard druid basket, which I mean, I don't have too much negative to say about this movie, but that's probably the weakest part of it to me. Was not giving the slightest shit whether they made out at the end or not.
My guess would be from a writing standpoint, I think that might fuck up the choice he has to make at the end of the film. I'm assuming we're going to go full
spoilers.
With
Yes,
with the podcast. Yeah, I mean, I think him choosing her over the dead wife is more meaningful because they're not romantically involved. I think if they were, I think it would make that choice both more obvious and less impactful. With my little asterisk, I don't think it was very impactful at all. We'll get to that, but
well, it was telegraphed so heavily, that it lost a step there.
It did. As far as the cast, I thought Pine and Rodriguez were really good. Sophia Lillis, who played Dork, the tiefling, I thought she was fine. Justice Smith, I felt like kind of was a weak link, but I don't know how much of that is him and how much I just didn't like the character. I felt like it was a really kind of thin, buffoonish character. I know he's kind of meant to be, but I don't know. It didn't really work for me one way or another.
He felt very D&D to me. He felt like honestly, he felt like a character from the cartoon show, which of course they reference.
He felt like a cartoon character for me, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I certainly didn't buy the end resolution of Dork being even open to like dating him. I was like, I don't see that happening at all.
Oh no, of course not.
Well, it's not like they went so heavy on it that like they couldn't come back for the sequel and have it be like, yeah, she gave him one more shot, and after 10 minutes was like, no, definitely not interested. I'd say she's actually the weak link of the party. Not saying like the actress was bad, but I thought that character was at least interesting. I've always been indifferent to druids in my Dungeons and Dragons career.
Man.
So at least she wasn't like as ponderous and like, giving lectures about nature constantly or about the magnificence of total neutrality, or whatever druids are into canonically. There
was a hint of just like, I don't like men or not men, just humans. I don't
humanity.
like humans. Yeah, like there was lip service to that.
See, I thought just by dint of her kind of espionage capabilities, shape-shifting, I thought like she was actually kind of proved her worth to the group. And I since we're talking about I have an active gaming group, and one of my players loves druids, so I've been shown over and over again actually how useful they can be to the party. So, but I don't know. I just found the sorcerer. I felt like this is kind of one of my problems with the film overall. Is I felt like he just felt like any run-of-the-mill fantasy movie spellcaster, and within the D&D milieu, there is a difference with sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards.
True,
and I feel like the film just didn't do anything at all to distinguish that, really. And again, not that I wanted a big rules discussion in the film, but this is a matter of like establishing a personality and something distinct from Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. And I felt like that's where the film fell down a lot. Was it just other than if you're a D&D player, I felt you could pick up on a lot of the Easter eggs, but otherwise I felt like it felt very generic fantasy to me, rather than carving out a niche for itself.
Well, it
is a little surface level
fantasy
in some ways,
but that's Dungeons and Dragons, man. It's all fantasy rolled into one.
That is sort of the thing. I get what you mean though, because like there are specifics on how magic works that are not really. I don't know. You see specific spells from D&D in this. There's a lot of calling out of like, Baldur's Gate, Mordenkainen, the Harpers, like things that are familiar from D&D are front and center here, and they are represented, and that's cool. But yeah, they don't really get into like, how sorcerers and warlocks differ, per se. You've got, they are warlocks essentially, the bad guys in this, right? They're the red witch or
they're wizards. It's
okay.
It's the red wizards of Thay. Yeah, they're specific. Yeah, these are definitely wizards. She was a wizard, and she serves Tom, who is a lich, who again is a undead wizard. So yeah,
they function.
We didn't
like
get really any.
Though, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. We talked. John and I had a whole. I guess in our Baldur's Gate episodes, where we talked about the Baldur's Gate games, and to have a section where we're talking about those type of video games, or how would you adapt this to the screen. And so in those episodes, we kind of went over the difficulty of getting Dungeons and Dragons on screen, and especially in live action, and how baroque the rule set gets, and the difficulty in parsing the difference between wizard magic and cleric magic and druid magic, and how those are different things, but how is a normie supposed to know the difference? I don't know that digging deeper into that would have done this movie that's already like over 2 hours a lot of favors. I think they kept things simple enough. It was intuitive that her sort of like nature powers were different than his wizard powers, such as they were.
Yeah.
And from the bad guys, wizard powers they're different in some fundamental way. I guess because they're indebted to what's his name? Zaz-Tam. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I get that he's from the game as well.
I was thinking
they made
it was
a
like he's
clear
Dark
choice.
Side and she's Steppenwolf, and that's how I was thinking of it the whole time.
The true landmarks. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I really didn't, and I think you guys talk. I didn't hear that particular discussion. I've actually never played any of the D&D video games, despite having played the actual.
There's a lot of them.
Actually, I haven't played the tabletop version for longer than I care to admit. I haven't played this, but I think that I didn't want a deep dive on rules and mechanics. I feel like I think where the movie really succeeded well was what John talked about as far as the offhand references, the setting, and getting a lot of that kind of incidental flavor. And I thought, I really liked. I felt like it did a really good job adapting the mechanics of the game, which are never meant to be more than an abstraction anyway, back into live action. I thought that was wonderful. When I pointed out Simon not being really called out as a different, I meant again more for flavor. We didn't need certainly didn't need a 10 or 15 minute scene, explaining any of that. But I also realized that I'm probably on the outs as far as my criticisms of the film, because the things I didn't like are probably what's making it, frankly, really successful. So I know that I'm basically wrong about it, despite the fact that I don't think I am.
Well,
so
it made a clear and deliberate decision that it was going to be, they'll have the references, they'll have the monsters, they'll have specifically D&D monsters, and that'll give it some of its own flavor. And I think there's quite a bit in there for people who are familiar with the game, and they can be like, oh, okay, so I get it. The paladin is a dungeon master controlled NPC, or something like that. They can enjoy that part, but for the most part, they're just like, well, it's going to be like things people are familiar with. It's going to have a real simple structure. It's going to be like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's going to be like Ocean's 11. It's going to be the kind of things you're familiar with. A lot of joking, a lot of fun, characters that are funny and entertaining, action scenes, and it's going to be a very familiar thing. And we're just going to focus on doing that well. And I think just focusing on a thing that works and doing it well does get you pretty far, as it turns out.
Especially if you cast it really well.
And they did, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're doing this making a Marvel movie, but for Paramount and with a different IP, that's the thing. I think a lot of studios and would-be cinematic universes get wrapped around the axle trying to chase different particulars of the Marvel formula or whatever, but kind of overthinking it. Just if you cast really charismatic people in the core roles and they work, then that's going to be the big thing that sells it. That's what sold Iron Man, not his deep and affecting backstory.
I mean, I will say I think this is probably the most successful attempt or work to mirror what Marvel's done. And you guys have mentioned a couple of times. I mean, this is very much what if Marvel, but pure fantasy. I mean, we could argue kind of Doctor Strange does that, but I mean, this is very much. I think Guardians of the Galaxy is a clear template for this. I think just the Marvel tone overall really is, it's successful in the sense of obviously I think it's doing well. It's been really well reviewed and well accepted. The normies are all really enjoying it, despite it being
authentically nerdy.
It's the apex really of nerd shit.
Very nerdy.
Yeah.
Right.
Authentically nerdy is a good way of putting it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's definitely by nerds for everyone, really, because it is.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not pushing out the Fast and Furious crowd, which you mentioned that at the beginning. We're talking about Michelle Rodriguez, and I'm now is Fast and the Furious just for the gym what Final Fantasy is for the basement? I mean, is it just for gym dorks?
I think so. Kind of, yeah. At the end of the day, it's the same kind of shit.
Well, and they're heist movies, which they're ensemble heist movies, which I guess Michelle Rodriguez knows in and out now. And I mean, I haven't seen enough of those to know if she's playing the barbarian
I mean, we are saying that how MCU this is. It's also very Fast and Furious. I mean, it's yeah, you're right. It's a collage of things that are popular right now. It is very much of its time, a very 2023 film. In fact, I would say if there's anything that holds it back at all, it's that it is so of its time and so familiar at this moment. Like I said, I think it's kind of does a very good job of achieving those things, but it is part of a very very established continuum of these movies that are coming out right now.
I would say if there's anything that holds it back, it would be the special effects being nothing special, like short of embarrassing, but they're Disney Plus level effects. And
that sounds so damning. I know it's not. I know it's not intended. They're fine effects, but
well, I mean it's not intended to be a compliment.
That's a rough
but
phrase.
they're passable. But there's no reason why the Dungeons and Dragons big budget movie could not have had the best big budget dragon we've seen since Game of Thrones, and it doesn't. It's got one that would have looked, I guess, maybe impressive in 2003. But it's functional in this cartoony environment.
I think the dragon that got the most screen time, I think that at some degree it not being that great kind of works in favor of what they were going for, which is clearly, humor with a little bit of danger.
It's a level boss too. It's
kinda... Well, I mean, yeah, because Themberchild is this big, fat, obese, overfed dragon, and so they were going for the humor. They weren't going for one-upping, Vermithrax or Smaug.
For sure, and the movie's pretty deft about that, and not, being content to have the lackey of the big boss be the villain of this movie, and having the Displacer Beast being about the biggest monster you're going to fight. I mean, I suppose they did fight the fat dragon, but really they ran away from it. And I mean, that's another way that I think it's kind of. It's nice for the nerds to be able to recognize that, yeah, this is a fairly low level adventure for as epic as a movie kind of requires it to be. It's got to kind of involve saving the world, but also we've finessed things so they don't have to fight anything too high a level.
Very D&D in that regard. Mm-hmm. This is like level 5 to 7 adventures.
Yeah, but see, okay, I'm going to get very nerd alert here. That actually isn't true, because the wizard they do fight at the end,
yeah,
she's clearly at least 17th level, because the level she's throwing 9th level spells out. She's throwing out Meteor Swarm.
Is time stop?
Time stop was 9th level. Meteor Swarm is 9th level. I mean, yeah. So, yeah, that's one thing that I'm fine with them abandoning like this. Like I was absolutely fine with them not worrying about that coming out in the film, because I don't think you can really do that very well in a film. But
I'm also going to no prize. My explanation for that too is that she used up a lot of her like spell slots, spell power for that day, getting ready for the big, world-ending ritual, and it was a bit drained by the time she was actually mixing it up with them directly.
That may be true. She limited spell
and
slots left.
They're not fighting Zuz-Tam or the Ghost Lord at the end. They're fighting, the acolyte. They're even, that's the sort of elastic D&D kind of like, well, I'm gonna have you fight a real boss here. We're just gonna bend the rules a little bit too. That feels very D&D as well.
I think
the dragon is over leveled too, so they make it work.
I think there's a really interesting, at least for somebody, again, who's been playing D&D for a long time, the film represents a really interesting, I think, either shift or movement in tone. Now, I think you're both right that I think there was a very calculated attempt at adopting and using the F&F and MCU tone down to hiring guys who wrote, and directed Spider-Man. I mean, that was not coincidental. And I know that everybody's experience with D&D is going to be different depending on who's running the game and what their preferences are. As somebody who came from old school, I think part of my just not loving the film and not going over the moon like a lot of folks did, I guess I felt like there was just the preponderance of the MCU-ness, the constant humor, the undercutting of danger, the emphasis on that kind of stuff for me took away from the D&D-ness. And I'm not talking about mechanics. I mean, I really would have liked something a lot more pulpy, something a lot more that was more about Dungeons and Dragons and tomb raiding, and I guess a little more, not totally, a little more along the spectrum of Conan the Barbarian, the movie, rather than Guardians of the Galaxy. And again, that's personal preference, and I think the film's success speaks to they probably made the right decision, and I'm full of shit as usual. But
no, I mean, I think your
No, I agree.
personal preferences are perfectly valid, and you're entitled to them. I do think that doing a more Conan version of it, a more serious version of it, is both considerably more difficult to pull off and also almost certainly less profitable. So I completely get why they went the route they did, and
I do
don't really begrudge them
Conan is such a specific tone. Like, that kind of R-rated intensity is not obviously what they would be aiming for, but something like Dragon Slayer,
right.
Something that just had a little bit more darkness, a little bit more practical effects, frankly. Like, obviously they weren't going to go that way, but like to have, I don't know. I think just maybe a different tone than what's so familiar right now. Because I feel like this is a good film. This is not going to be a film. It's not going to be on my top 10 list for the year, because it is so. It's just sort of a familiar thing. It is just like a bunch of movies that have come out. Is this functionally better than Shang-Chi?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's functionally better than 60% of the MCU at this point. I would say it's in the top half.
Okay,
and I would
I
would agree with that. But my caveat is not by a lot more. Mm-hmm. Like I think it is, but it's not. It's not like significantly better than Shang-Chi. I think it's better.
Right.
But I'm not going to revisit either one. I don't think. Like I mean,
sure, right, yeah.
I mean, I love the side swipes at Shang-Chi we're all taking now, but I would say it outclasses Shang-Chi.
There's nothing wrong with
not because it does anything especially more.
Oh, I think there's plenty wrong with it, but that's a different discussion.
It is fine.
No,
it's not awful.
It's not that Dungeons and Dragons does anything that's particularly innovative relative to what Shang-Chi's doing, or that it does anything particularly brilliant. It mainly, I think, it outranks it on the strength of Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Hugh Grant.
Yes.
And I like Justice Smith in this movie. Versus
the Paladin. The Paladin rules too.
Oh yeah, Renee John Page, of course. That every scene with the Paladin is great. I mean,
yeah,
that is.
I agree with that. I love the Paladin in this. I thought that was really
walks
well
away
done.
with the movie. I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, literally walks away. Walks in a straight line over the rock. But no, just a perfectly deployed supporting character. He's in there for part of the second act only, and just does his thing and leaves. I'm trying to think of a good classic analog of a character that functions that way, but it's just really fun. And Pine's constant annoyance with him from the jump is great. I mean, the one thing I will say about this that I think the movie does really well. It's not that it's groundbreaking, but just in terms of balancing the core party. And I mean that in the sense that the classic D&D sense, that when you break down our heroes here, they've got a warrior, a rogue, a wizard, and a priest class all accounted for in their core party. But beyond that, just they all have very distinct personalities that I could tell you about. There's that old Red Letter Media review of the Phantom Menace where he's challenging people, describe the personality of Han Solo to me, or C-3PO to me, and they can throw out all these adjectives, and then now describe Qui-Gon Jinn to me, or Princess Amidala, and you can't describe what their personality is like. Everybody in this party, I like some of them more than I like the druid, but they all have a distinct flavor of personality that they bring to it, and the paladin is his own flavor that comes in for part of it. And I think that's just key to keeping the scene work lively as the movie goes on.
Absolutely.
I did like Hugh Grant. You talked about. I did like him a lot in it. I think, and he was used, I think, probably exactly the right amount. I think to me the scene that was the best scene in the whole movie, and I know they released this early, was the whole Speak with Dead scene when they dug up the corpse to ask the 5 questions. And I thought, and that's not the tone I wanted for the entire film, but I thought it was just the really most effective marriage of source material with story with acting. And I thought it was just really wonderfully woven together. And I probably would have liked more of that to some degree. But kind of back with the Metsy, yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I guess I kind of would like. I wouldn't mind a horror or D&D movie, but I think more shifting towards the Dragon Slayer. Not all the way there, but a little more, just a little more serious, where it's less jokey, it's less a few action beats, and it comes back to it being mostly a comedy with a few action beats, and that's not really what I wanted out of a D&D movie. I'm not opposed to humor or comedy at all. I didn't want it to be that.
No, but that's exactly what I would describe as being the Marvel formula. And
you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I think the whole thing about those is that they're comedies with some action in them, as opposed to like the classical action comedies of the '80s, with your
Right.
48 Hours or whatever, that are kind of action movies with jokes. I think the thing that distinguishes the Marvel movies and I guess the post-Marvel era is that now we get these big special effects extravaganzas that are really, though, comedies with action beats sprinkled into them.
Well, I mean, we don't get actual comedies anymore. So, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We're losing, like, all genres are kind of just getting mulched into one sort of popular movie genre currently. Even something like Top Gun Maverick has a hint of this format, I mean, that's probably not a statement I'd like to expand on, but but
no, I want you to spend 15 minutes bemoaning the loss of like the sanctity of the Top Gun series as a work of dramatic art in our fallen era.
But my point is, movies have a feel and a vibe right now that they are starting to get very good at duplicating, and I don't know. I don't know how this did at the box office. They're clearly angling to make more of these, was my takeaway from it. And I'd kind of like to see them do it because they did pretty good and they can build on the groundwork here.
Yes, they must be making more of them. Because I don't know how it did box office-wise either, but it's getting really good audience reactions and critical reactions, I think. I mean, not that it's the best critically reviewed movie of the year, but, that on the tomato side, it's positive. Yeah. It's all thumbs ups.
I mean, just by nature of the source material, this would be a really interesting and I think good franchise to do it more anthology style. I don't think they will. I think they'll. Or at least not at first. I mean, they'd probably, again, to echo what Al said, the smart money is bringing the cast back because they're familiar. But I mean, just its very nature, this is a literal universe that you could tell tons of parallel stories or very loosely connected stories, and I think the audience might be more on board for it because, again, the very nature of it supports that. I mean, you could have Chris Pine do a walk-on for a movie and not made a major star, and the audience would get the connection. But
I'm not suggesting you do this, but you could do a sequel where the druid is the star, and Chris Pine just has a cameo in one scene, and she joins up with a new party and blah blah blah. That's not the one I would pitch to them, but there's nothing about this world that makes that not viable.
Well, it's sort of an ensemble. I think a campaign party, if you will, is kind of the thing I think you need to have for this to have its identity maintained. I guess you wouldn't even need that, but that's what I would think. They should do, and what the thing seems built for. So the ensemble can grow or expand. You can put Mantis in next time or whatever you want to do. Take people out.
People in the meetings around this were talking about there's spin-offs. Every character can have a spin-off. You can introduce people and spin them off into their own. This one character from this movie, the Paladin, could go down to Baldur's Gate next time, and they could have their own streaming show down there or whatever.
Right.
And look, I'm losing enthusiasm for that, as I said. Not that I was even like saying, "Oh, this will be so great," but just like that's what 50% of the meetings were about. But
which smart, I guess.
The thing is, they did the good. They made the movie.
Yeah. They did the
movie.
Thing. Yeah, they made the movie the right way. And
this is not an easy world to get out there.
Right, and I would love if they made like 5 more of these, in some form or another. And, they can be of varying qualities. It would be great if they were unconnected, if they were just sort of episodic adventures. I would have a blast if the next one they fight the Beholder, and then
I'd be
there's
up
an
for that.
Orcus movie,
I'd be up
or
for that.
like absolutely, that'd be great. That'd be great. If this thing really found an audience and built, this could be a terrific framework for a strong franchise. There were moments this reminded me of something like Galaxy Quest. If they can continue to find that mode for it, if it can, and I guess what I would hope for, but I don't even need, is trying to just find a little bit more individual personality that separates it from the pack of things coming out right now. But even if they don't find that, I'm still cool with just seeing more Monster Manual expansions. I kind of just that was some of my favorite stuff. It's just like, we're gonna put in specifically D&D beasts. We're gonna have a Displacer beast and a gelatinous cube and an owl bear. Yeah, good choices. Do those things. Not like an army of orcs. Very happy about that. So
we didn't even get an army of skeletons. I thought that's what the whole Red Wizard Necromancer stuff was going towards. Was okay. She's going to raise an army of cannon fodder for the people to kind of mow through at the end. We didn't get that, shockingly.
Yeah.
Instead, we got Displacer Beast, which I'm not going to complain about.
Probably a combination of both budgetary limitations and, I think, again, tonal ones. I think they wanted to keep this both smaller, and they didn't want to go... I think that's going to lean towards more sword and sorcery tone than they want, as far as... having
sword and sorcery tone.
Sword and sorcery is a very specific tone of fantasy.
I want more of it.
That's more Conan, where this is more kind of high light fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, the Northman is more of a sword and sorcery film than this.
Right. Yeah.
So that
I don't know.
that's
Army of Darkness also exists. You can do an army.
Oh, that's true.
You can do a goofy army of skeletons for not that much money.
They did. That's sword and sorcery for sure. Army of the Darkness. I wish it had a little more of that in it. I guess it's kind of.
I think it's got a fair amount there.
A bit, yeah.
I mean, it's post Marvel Army of Darkness though. It's not 90s Sam Raimi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's one element of restraint that they showed, which frankly shocks me, and I'm not even sure that the movie wouldn't be better with this, but it was conspicuous for its absence. I thought was some sort of cute, like Baby Yoda / Porg type creature that became the mascot of the group. I can't believe they didn't find a Displacer kitten or something that they adopted.
A flump.
Oh,
sure,
I would
whatever that
for
is.
The next one. If I were trying to get a sequel, I would be like, well, we're going to put a flump in this one. You're going to love it.
Yep.
What's a flump?
Yep. It is. How do I describe this? It is essentially a floating pancake with eye stalks.
That sounds gross. That sounds like not cute at all.
Awful.
To be honest.
But I'm just saying you could make it cute. You could make
Depends
it.
how big you make the eyes, I guess, because that's how they get you with Baby Yoda.
I'm googling this.
I want to throw out, since we're doing MCU comparisons, I'll say I think it shared another weakness, the MCU. Completely unremarkable, and I didn't remember anything but the score.
Yeah.
And this is a movie that should have had, again, I think should have had the potential for a really great score, and I don't think I noticed the score once.
I mean,
okay, this flump would scare the shit out of me, man. I'm looking at the flump. It's really upsetting.
Are you looking at the flump?
It has cutesy little eyes, but I just look at this thing like attaching itself to your head or something. This is a head crab. Okay.
I would say you're right about the music not really distinguishing itself. I mean, I did think that they incorporated a really nice moment of Chris Pine being a bard and singing a song to his friend when she was sad. Like that could have died
do we know if that was
on screen. But
was that his voice? Do we know if that was actually him or not?
I think it was. It was not good enough to sound like a double. It wasn't
okay.
He didn't It didn't suck, but it wasn't great.
Oh, I didn't. No, I was actually. I mean, like I said, he wasn't like Ewan McGregor surprising like Moulin Rouge, but I was really impressed. That was like, if that's him, I'm really impressed both the bravery and he's got a decent singing voice. But I agree with you, Al. I think that scene could have gone sideways 5 different ways, and I think it worked. With him,
that's where you need those actors that have actual chemistry to to sell that.
That's part of the reason I was shipping them. Is like they had such good chemistry on screen together. just comfortable movie star energy.
It did. I honestly thought they were laying pipe for it too. Like very specifically, with there's some part where he says to her like she has some idea, and he goes, "Oh God, Holga, I could kiss you." You know that thing that people in movies say and no one in real life has ever said to another person when they're excited. But he says that, and she's like, hostily like, "Try it, I dare you." And I thought, so at the end, he's going to say something like that again, and she's going to like more coyly say like, "Try it," and then ride her horse off screen. Like
she'd have to reconcile, giving up her kink for the short folks. So
yeah. Well, and I think you convinced me, Michael, because I was like John, kind of shipping them, but I think just some of what you said here has convinced me that it's better to have saved that for sequel, because you don't want to step on the Bradley Cooper delightfulness. And you're definitely right about the resurrection tablet thing, where if there is a romantic thing going on between them, then it is less about him like letting go of his wife and embracing this concept of his found family more generally, and it's more about just replacing his dead wife in like a very one-to-one fashion.
I wonder if that was why
it's and now you can wear her dress too.
Yeah. I mean, because it is ultimately the daughter that decides. It's like, Holga can be the mother instead, So, I guess limiting how much they actually wanted to get into that was probably wise. I mean, you do spend the whole movie kind of running the numbers on like, okay, who's he going to have to use the resurrection stone on instead of his wife? Will it be the daughter? Will it be the wizard? You kind of just got to go through everyone in the team. And yes, the logical person is of course Michelle Rodriguez. And this is a lowering of stakes thing as well.
That's another one of the difficult parts about this world, is trying to establish, okay, but injury and death don't really mean anything because of all the magic in this world. And so I mean, I think
that's kind of true
of
D&D as well. I mean, when you play it.
That's what I'm talking about.
It all depends on the DM in your campaign, my good friend.
Right. And so I think to do Dungeons & Dragons on screen, you need a pretty hard-nosed DM who's going to enforce some stakes and consequences from events that happen onto the story. But that's at odds with doing the PG Marvel version of this. That's basically a comedy.
Yep.
But I think they did a pretty good job of not getting into the resurrection any more than they have to, except to say, "Oh, Red Wizard Blade, only the tablet works on this one."
Yeah. I think one of the things that I think ultimately what didn't work for me, and I think for me what brought the film to just it's fine level is the main relationship they wanted us to be invested in. I just didn't give a shit, and I am such an easy mark for father-daughter stories. Like I have two daughters, and like commercials can make me cry. Like I am such an easy mark for this shit, and I just didn't care. I mean, to the degree that I feel like this movie makes the mistake that Ted Lasso does, that there shouldn't be a kid at all. Like from my D&D movie, like I don't want my adventure to want to stop adventuring and go home. Like that's not what I want. And it didn't work. Like I not even just like it's not what I want. I feel like there was no. It was just like, okay, all right. He's kind of a terrible dad too.
Kind of, but that's sort of the point of the movie too. And I do think you create a lot of problems if you remove the kid entirely, that you need to come up with entirely new motivations for all the core characters. She is functional in that sense, but I would agree with you that she needs more characterization. That the daughter as a character, she exists as an idea for most of this movie, and I don't know that there's any reason why she couldn't have had a character class of her own and been, a wizard in training or whatever. I mean, other than the other general principle I have, that you probably want as few wizards as possible in the main cast here, because the magic just gets it just kind of.
She'd have been the bard.
Yeah, she should have been a rogue in training.
I mean, you could have made the dead wife his venturing partner. Like there could have been. People did that, and she could have died as a result of an adventure they had, and now he was seeking to bring her back. I mean,
but then he doesn't feel the guilt is not as personalized to him. Then it's sort of like she brought it on herself if it's a thing they were jointly doing.
Right, and I get that. And again, I'm at odds with the success of the film. To me, that was stuff I didn't like, because I felt like that again, that's not what I want out of a D&D adventure. I'm not looking for guilty dad looking to fix things with his daughter, but I'm also, of a certain age, and I just, I want to kill shit and take loot. So,
And I'm here to watch Michelle Rodriguez lay down with very small men.
And I'm fine with all of that. It's it's all good to me. I want characters that have stakes and importance to them, and I also want Hobbit sex jokes and I want displacer beasts, and I'm fine with all these things. I think they're all good. I just kind of like it. It hits a ceiling in innovation and excitement for me, which is a pretty sizable ceiling. It's pretty good, but yeah, like you say, I don't know that this film's going to mean anything to me, and I mean, there's a chance it will. This could be a grower. It has enough competency and solid things, and I think the cast, as you were saying, Al, is so strong and so effective. That might be enough, and it's definitely would be a groundwork for a sequel. You bring these characters back, and maybe after a second movie, maybe I do really care about them. Maybe I am invested deeply, and if I can't remember any of their names right now. Edgin and Holga and the rest. Simon, yeah,
Simon. Doric.
I could come around to all them.
And Paladin.
You can bring back Hugh Grant if you want. He was fun. Whatever. It's fine.
I remember Hugh Grant's name because his name was Forge, and
Forge.
I spent the whole movie thinking
the X-Men.
That's a dwarf name. Why does Hugh Grant have the dwarf name?
It is.
In this world.
Well, what was his class? What was his class in this? Was he just a rogue? I guess
he was a rogue.
But what was his role in the party? Like, was he? I mean, he didn't seem to be a thief with any lock picking skills or combat skills.
I've seen some really interesting, deep, nerdy dive discussions on was Edgin really a bard or was he a rogue? But that's a whole nother.
Hang on, I'm a second edition guy where a bard was a type of rogue. It was bard or thief.
Bards are their own thing now, and in fact, one of the reasons people are arguing that he's not a 5th edition bard is because bards are full spellcasters now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, back in the day, bards used to be this really weird. You had to go through 3 different classes before you could become a full bard. It was very odd.
It's sort of a fighter, mage, thief, multi-class guy. I could see that. And somebody mentioned I saw that you could view him as a fighter who dual classes when he steals to become a thief, and that kind of has to start over his progression.
I know. We're gonna wrap up. I know that. I want to ask you guys one question though. I thought about this in parallel to Star Trek. Does this work better as an episodic TV series rather than a film series? Because that's one thing I think has turned out with Star Trek. Star Trek is not that great. It's really difficult to translate successfully into an ongoing film franchise where it's much better at home as a TV series. I tend to think this might be better that way,
I could see it working, but I think that it would be tough. I think it would be, just the budgetary restrictions. I guess if they can do Mandalorian and it looks like it looks, then there's no reason.
Well, if we don't worry about how much it costs, I'm talking more about the actual kind of stories that how it would work best to tell stories. Yeah. I tend to think that this, just by its nature, is going to be much better as an episodic, ongoing thing rather than, hey, we're going to have one every 3 years.
Well, I think they're saying that's sort of what we envision the movie series being, is a more episodic type of movie series rather than a Lord of the Rings or whatever that leads one directly into the next.
The line is getting blurred between movie and TV lately, so...
Yeah, well, that's the two things I would say is, like John was saying about The Mandalorian, to me, The Mandalorian is just a D&D TV show in a different game world. And
pretty much, yeah.
And I guess to answer your original question, yes, I think this probably would work better as an ongoing TV series, but we're in an age, time anyway, where you don't have to choose between those things. If a thing's successful, it's going to be both, ultimately.
Yeah.
Whether it's Star Wars or Marvel or DC or whatever. Game of Thrones will eventually be a movie.
If this has legs and or the sequel has is good, I think you're right. I think the chances of us seeing a TV series are pretty strong.
Yeah. If it works, it makes sense. It's built for it.
Yeah.
I have one question before we finish up here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you can have a question too. It's all right.
Well, I don't even know if this is a question, but
Yeah.
we compare it so much to Marvel, and I guess maybe we could connect it to Ant-Man Quantumania, where I had some of this issue too. But I had another point of reference for why this feels so of the modern day, and I think it's something that kind of hurts the setting. I guess that part of the fun they want to be having here, at least, is that the game world is so filled with crazy creatures everywhere you look, and it's Jonathan is a bird man that they can ride out of the window, and that Bradley Cooper and show up as this guy, and you look at this corner, and now we got walking brains that do this, and everything's got different rules every which way, every corner you turn, it's different. And that that's something that stretches back to the 70s, I guess. But in today's age, it all feels a little Rick and Morty to me. And that's the same way that Quantum, like this sort of, it's so weird to say that the thing that I am now getting bored of, it feels rote to me, is wildly inventive visual diversity of all the background creatures. And sort of one-off gag creatures anywhere you look. And I just feel like I've seen that in so many different forms now that there's certainly a generation of writers and designers in Hollywood currently that are very good at this thing. But I don't know, it's losing a little luster for me as time goes on.
Huh. Man, I don't know how to solve that one.
No, I don't either.
Less
I don't
visually
know
distinct creatures. Yeah, that's
right?
rough. Okay.
Was Army of Skeletons? Was that really my suggestion for fixing? I don't know.
I know what you mean, though. I know, like, we're doing a thing now. Like Quantumania is full of like designed beasts and things like that that don't ultimately amount to really anything.
Right.
We're a long way from 1977 and the Star Wars Cantina being, sort of exhilarating or original. And
because we saw 3 different cantinas in Quantumania. Loki had its own cantinas. Everything's got its own cantina scene now. It's part of, I guess, fantasy world building.
I guess you need.
I don't know how to fix that.
I don't know. A flumph bar would be new.
There you go.
Do that.
So what was your question, though, John?
Oh, okay, yeah. So the bard, his scenes of where he's rallying people, building morale, making plans. Is this an attempt to dramatize buffs in a game? The bard sings a song of morale, and everyone has a +5 to saves or whatever. Like, is that what they are going for there? It's not an explicit thing, but I feel like it might have started as an explicit idea to try to dramatize that.
I think it is.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
I think it is. I mean, just because I think that from everything I've read, the writer directors, I mean, they're very well versed in the game and the lore, and I have to think that was deliberate. I have to think that was it's kind of a softened, layered approach to it because it's not overt, but I do think it. I think it is.
Because it seems like that's answering a question, like how do you deal with a bard? How do you deal with characters that buff in this way? All right, so I guess that's it on Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. It was fun. I'd like to see another one. I don't know. Any final thoughts for you, Al?
I think they need to kill some people next time. For real. Keep them dead. It's my feedback on a lot of shit, but
Very good.
Especially in this game world. Just get rid of that druid for me, or get rid of the paladin. Really, let him do it. Let him go out doing slaying some giant beast. But the idea that there are some stakes here, and there's not always a resurrection spell ready to just undo the last half hour of the movie.
Oh, by the way, they just did the thing with the Hulk from Avengers. They just took it. They just did it.
Oh yeah,
wholesale, absolutely wholesale. Yeah.
Okay.
Although that was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
It was fun.
So I was
just like it was fun in Avengers. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
sure. I made you momentarily confused because I was like, "Hang on, now I thought we were ripping off Guardians of the Galaxy here." You're ripping off Avengers.
Michael, final thoughts on the D&D movie?
Needed more beholders.
I think they're saving the beholders, and that's okay.
Probably.
They're like, we're going to build this up, and then next time, beholders. I hope.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to Framework. Hey, please rate and review us on the podcast provider of your choice. It helps the visibility of the show. And then more people download it. So I'm told. Thank you for listening very much. All right. Talk to you next time. Bye.